Goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes va vite, Nuno Mendes passe devant Quadrado, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, the show seizing the moment of international break and using it for reflection, also known as the show always trying to offer some balance and analysis in a world of clickbait and hot takes. My name is Mikko, really great to have you with me right now, and you can also find and follow me online, now also on TikTok, where I just released a video talking about President Mbappé and his future in this club, so go and have a look. I'm there at PSG Review, and same handle is also in Instagram at PSG Review, that is, and on Twitter I am at PSG Review Pod, so feel free to find me in those platforms and say hello or ask a question if you have one. PSG Review is also available from all of your usual platforms for podcasting, so subscribe if you already haven't and rate and review if you please. It feels simultaneous, like the season has just started and that it's been going on for a good long while, but neither one of these things are entirely true. Of course, we are precisely 10 competitive matches into this new campaign. That is 8 Ligue 1 match days and 2 in the Champions League group stage. This is nearly the halfway of the autumn in that we have 9 Ligue 1 matches left before the new year and of course 4 Champions League 1. So it's almost midterm time in a manner of speaking, and while our players are with their respective national teams, or if not selected, then they are at the training center keeping their form up, I thought that it could be a good idea to take a moment to give them my PSG Review midterm assessment. I won't deal with grades, numbers. I've done enough grading in my past when I was teaching in the university, and to be honest, perhaps the grades aren't the most modern thing anyway, so it's all verbal feedback here for the players and the coach who have been involved so far. Luis Enrique came to Paris as an accomplished manager with a formidable CV, of course, as well as one of those ones whose previous gig with the Spanish national team didn't end exactly with a roar, more of a whimper, but perhaps more important than him. Not that he isn't important, but there was this feeling like perhaps for once our coach could have the power to decide and also work in relative peace, as opposed to the previous examples of extreme player power, overconfident sporting directors or too eager to get involved club president, let alone the last word from Doha. PSG didn't just recruit fairly cleverly towards the specific kind of project, but got rid of players who undoubtedly could have still made a solid contribution but were seen as bad influences, however you define bad influence. And we all might have differing opinions on those players and to what extent their quality and contribution could have been useful at least during the transition phase, but the club was bold and perhaps took a little bit of a risk as well to turn the page as much as they did. There's also this other thing that comes to player power. I know a lot of people who don't know the club very well. I would argue they like to make these silly exaggerations like Kylian Mbappé is calling all the shots like he is the king of Paris. And not to say that he isn't heard or considered, but I think that his power is blown entirely out of proportion for clicks and online engagement. It just simply isn't true to that extent that people say that it is. Luis Enrique has taken the baton and ran with it. He has introduced a new identity and a new system, a style of play. It's very positive and attacking football. The criticism has been mainly around the Newcastle match where his lineup was too offensive-minded and that destabilized the midfield, which was very strong, of course, for Newcastle. But on the whole, his project is in its very early days, and I would say things are fairly positive for now. Many have been more critical, but I see enough good there to really want to see where this project is heading. In my books, he has been a good addition to this team, even if I was slightly skeptical before his arrival, but a lot of that skepticism was also because it makes little difference who the coach is if they don't have the freedom, and for now he has had it, and that gives me a lot of hope as well. Our number 99 is Gianluigi Donnarumma. The Italian national team keeper is now playing his third season with us, and he has always been a good shot stopper. That is undeniable, one of the best actually, but he has let himself down a little with his footwork and ball delivery. It's been pretty shaky at times, and It might not be absolutely perfect, but who knows if he has worked on that a lot on his own time or what has happened, but it seems to me that he has improved a lot for this season. He has been taking good steps forward and I'm pretty happy with him as things stand. He isn't the best goalkeeper in the world, I don't think, but he's really good and I find his start to this campaign to be a very positive one. Keylor Navas and Arnaud Tenas haven't been playing, so we're not really spending too much time talking about them. In our defense, Marquinhos has been giving us some flashes of his former self. Sometimes he has been seen as a bit of a frustrating player in that we know he's a great player. His potential is to be one of the best centre-backs in the world who has had a bit of a habit to score important goals for us as well when it counts, but the last couple of seasons haven't really been all that great. This season, setting aside that one absolutely awful pass that opened the scoring for Newcastle, his season has given a lot of hope and perhaps the fact that he feels the pressure and competition in a positive way. He has more to prove this time. I've been pretty happy with him, I must say. Milan Skriniar. Now, I don't quite get him. I admit that I don't watch Serie A in any religious way, so I don't know him like that from before. But of course, his reputation has preceded his arrival, which was delayed a few times actually. But he's here now. A very calm presence, a tall player, and in front of the goal, he's dominant in the air, which is certainly something that we need. His challenge is, however, that he isn't fast, and Ligue 1 is. In our possession football, he can struggle to keep up with the counters, and actually when we were playing against Stade Rennes just before the international break and they held the ball and attacked quite a bit during the match, you could see how much better he was in those circumstances. To him, this is the kind of bread and butter football that he plays. So when we play big Champions League matches against teams that will keep the ball a lot and build, I believe that his value will only increase. But in Ligue 1, he comes with his limitations. We have also had Danilo playing in central defense in these matches, and he too isn't the fastest player and therefore he has some of the same limitations, but he is such a good player to have in the rotation. One of the mentally strongest players we have, but like said, he hasn't been playing too much this season. And a player who has played a lot this season is Lucas Hernandez. He has been one of my favorite new players for this campaign. I wasn't doubtful about him when he was coming because he was born in Marseille, because we're all born somewhere and we don't get to choose it, but there had been enough reports of him flirting with the whole rivalry and I didn't appreciate that. But if he's one thing, that is professional. I have admired his mentality and he's pretty clinical player all in all, really able to bring the ball up, do a little dribble, tackle hard. He's quick enough and very focused. So he has been one of the highlights of this team for me this season. Perhaps not as much as Achraf Hakimi, though Hakimi has been searching for his purpose and identity in Paris for a few years now, and he was always a little alienated by the whole Messi and Neymar football, and even during his first season, there was no real connection with Angel Di Maria either. He just didn't get to be part of that way of playing. He didn't have a strong role in it, and his style didn't gel well with what was around him. But this system we have now, and especially his connection with Ousmane Dembele on that right-hand side, has been really great. Hakimi has had the freedom to move more centrally as well, and all in all, we can say that his season so far has been what we were always hoping from him. Hakimi has also played a lot, as has Hernandez, like I said, on the other side. But now Norde Mukiele is back and hopefully we will see him getting some minutes also. I'm a big fan of Mukiele, I must say, but the depth with our wingbacks isn't best with Nuno Mendes injured currently. When he's back, there can be many more variations and Hernandez might find himself as more central defender, especially in Ligue 1. If everyone was available, I'd love to see back four with Hakimi, Marquinhos, Hernandez and Mendes. To me, that would be the strongest, although like said, when we are more in defense against strong teams, Skriniar will be very, very useful player there, as he already, of course, is anyways. Milan Skriniar and Donnarumma are actually the only players who have played every single minute so far this season. They haven't yet rested at all, and Hakimi is close to them. He has been on the bench for 8 minutes in these 10 matches. So in our defense, we have seen these players who have been the most involved in our play for now. And then there's Presnel Kimpembe. His estimated return to fitness is later on this year around November, I think, and he's been on the sidelines for quite a while, so we wait and see and hope for the best that he will find the right gear soon enough, because with him there's also the matter of contract ending next summer, so something has got to happen between now and then, or otherwise he will be free or even forced to find himself a new club. I have no inside information, of course, but I'm hoping that at least we could have a short 1-year extension with him, and then all parties involved can figure out the long-term plan, whether it is together or separately. But it is difficult to come from a long-term injury and negotiate a huge deal with your club de cœur, as the French say, the club of your heart. I always tend to think of Kimpembe as a young player, but he is now actually 28 years old, so he might have one big contract ahead of him, like really big one, whatever his specific scale is. What does a big contract mean for him? I don't know, but as much as he is one of our own and one of the very few who has come from the youth system, broken to be one of the regulars in the main team and then acted as a bridge between the two, it can feel like a bit of a gamble to give him as much as he might hope for when he has just had a very serious injury. That's why I wonder if 1-year extension would be doable, and then everybody could approach this from a position of relative power and a little bit more certainty. I'm not the one who decides on either side, but it's a thought. I was talking about this specific matter on TikTok. Actually, you can go and find that video there with the handle @PSG Review. PSG midfield has been fairly stable, setting aside some less successful experiments, but as we continue with our autumn midterm assessment, we can start off with Manuel Ugarte. Uruguayan Ugarte came with full effect and basically changed our midfield entirely. He was the defensive midfielder we had been hoping for ever since Thiago Motta hung his legendary Mizunos. There's been a lot of praise to Ugarte, and rightfully so, but a lot has also been depending on him. His level early on was so great that in the last couple of matches where he hasn't been on that level, it's looked even a little disappointing. But I think that it's far too soon to feel any sort of negative feeling about him. He works incredibly hard for PSG and also for Uruguay, the national team. His international breaks are quite something. I mean, before this one, there has only been one, but they are a little bit more grueling than for many other players. Long travel, and last time he was playing on such an altitude that I would have been out of breath for just getting up from a chair. Probably would have cancelled the mission midway and just sit down a little bit longer, but there's been no rest for him really, and I think that is one of the considerations. He needs a little downtime every now and again, but I'm very happy with his overall contribution, and I trust that he could be a key player for us for years to come. Warren Zaire-Emery, another one of those. If there is one player who represents the future of PSG, let it be him. He started getting minutes last season largely due to the many injuries, but so much so that he became the youngest ever player to start a Champions League knockout match when Christophe Galtier chose him in the first 11 against Bayern München in February. Now under Enrique, he has been a regular starter and really a key player. I already mentioned about the overall minutes played this season for different players in our squad, and Zaire-Emery is fourth on that list after Donnarumma, Skriniar and Hakimi, and that really says a lot for a 17-year-old. His ability to press and bring the ball up on the pitch are really great. He's really strong in duels and reads the game very well, but on top of this, he has also provided a few important assists to goals. There's always a chance that his form goes a little up and down sometimes, but at 17 he has now been captain of French under-21 team as assigned by Thierry Henry, and Didier Deschamps also talks about him in a very positive light. And why wouldn't he? Warren Zaire-Emery is after all the starting midfielder for the biggest club in France. Many of us were quite surprised that the man of the match against Dortmund, Vitinha, didn't start against Newcastle. Vitinha early on last season formed a great midfield pairing with Marco Verratti we used to call them, but his form was a bit up and down later on, as was admittedly the form and level of performance of the whole team. It was hardly his fault, certainly not his fault alone, but his start to this second season has been really strong. he supports the attack, but is still also a midfielder. Unlike some of those more offensively crowded options that Enrique has tested, Vitinha is very small. When I was at Parc des Princes last June to watch PSG Clermont, my 11-year-old son asked me, why is there a child there in the warm-ups, and I actually had to take a double check. It was not a child, of course, but it was Vitinha, who is not the tallest player, but what a mobile package he is. He's a short king, as they say these days, and fair play to him. He has a very significant role in this team, and the midfield with him, Ugarte and Shea Emery has been really solid in this early stage of this campaign. So much so actually that there's been very little rotation there, but Fabian Ruiz has played a little, 228 minutes in 7 matches, so basically minutes worth of 2.5 matches or thereabouts. The thing about him is that I feel like I have seen him playing to his potential perhaps once or twice in the whole time he's been with us, and I'd love to see it more, but he hasn't been consistent enough. Of course, his circumstances have not been ideal. I mean, last season he was struggling a little to find a sensible midfield style with players like Messi and Neymar occupying the type of role where they are positioned a little lower and doing a lot of the build-up, and that the players in the midfield with less credentials might need to find a place around them to support them, and that finding that place is not always easiest. It's not necessarily the most natural supporting role, but even this season, it's been up and down. I think there's enough in Ruiz to keep that hope alive that he will come good, but at the same time, enough of the sort of mid-level playing that makes the process a little bit frustrating, and not just for us, I assume, but for him too. Lee Kang-in was one of those new recruits from the summer that many people, and I include myself here, very excited about. He got, however, injured in his very first training match at the new training center and has had other issues with fitness also. He has played fairly negligible 142 minutes, so I can't really say much about him as a PSG player, but what I can say is that now he seems to be back playing football, at least hopefully staying healthy, and he had this bonus missing with his South Korean national team as he was playing in the Asian Games, and by winning the gold medal there, congratulations are in order. He also secured himself an exemption from the 1.5-year military service, which is compulsory in South Korea for all the men, and that really would have compromised his career plans otherwise. So I say good for him. At least it gives him, the choice what he wants to do. I look forward to having him back, and it will be interesting to see how his presence will change the formation, or will it? That's another question. Another player I'd like to see more before saying much is Cheikh Ndour, the Senegalese Italian tall young midfielder who had a very promising preseason, and while I didn't expect him to be a starter in this team, I didn't quite expect him to be this peripheral character either. He has only played 5 minutes in these 10 matches. He might be one of those players that is one for the future, although a whole midfield is one for the future, but I do like his presence and his constant search for progressive passes, which did very well in the preseason. PSG's attack has for years had huge names, sometimes as big as they get, certainly as names. And in the past couple of years, we've said goodbye to players like Edinson Cavani, Mauro Icardi, Angel Di Maria, Lionel Messi and Neymar Jr., and now we have much younger and far more French frontline, and one of the biggest name additions to it this summer was Ousmane Dembele, who of course came from Barcelona. There's been a lot of criticism for his somewhat underwhelming statistics with no goals and only 2 assists. I understand that many would have hoped for a bit bigger numbers for our new number 10, but at the same time he has been equally praised for his playmaking, for his build-up play, and like I mentioned earlier, his presence has given Achraf Hakimi a new lease on life as well. So setting aside the less than clinical finishing by Dembele, he has been a good addition. He brings a lot of danger in our attack. Another French player who arrived to Paris this summer, of course, is Randal Kolo Muani. Kolo Muani is not exactly a striker. This is a mistake that is often made. He's talked about as a striker, but he's very good and very fluid forward, but not really a target player, despite many understanding that to be his role. I like Kolo Muani a lot. I actually really like all of our forwards, and the real question is how to line them up in the best possible way. But setting aside the experiment in Newcastle, Kolo Muani has been constantly dangerous player, and I really enjoy his sense of urgency. It's really a beautiful thing to see. I know he was a bit pricey, but I hope that in the final analysis, it has been money well spent. Now, Gonzalo Ramos is that target player. If we hadn't really had that defensive midfielder before Ugarte for some time, we also hadn't had the box player, a proper number 9 for a while. Well, the target player lives or dies through the delivery he receives, and those automations in attack take a little bit of time to be formed, but he has shown us flashes of things that I believe are to come. And he also reminds me of Cavani in that he tracks back and supports the defense as well. His time will come, I believe so, and the hierarchy of our attack has also been impacted by the fact that Dembele, Kolo Muani and Mbappé know each other very well from the national team, and they are therefore more gelled together than Ramos is. As we have had to hit the ground running, it's been easier for Enrique to rely on already existing dynamics like with these French players. But Ramos is there, and bit by bit we will see more of him and more from him. And when Nuno Mendes comes back, his crosses might just start finding his fellow countrymen. So all in all, Ramos is work in progress, but it is important that we have that kind of goal scorer in our squad, and he is also young. So he will get his moments, I believe so. Perhaps even a period, or if we are lucky, an era. Marco Asensio, when he came, I was really wondering if this is a good deal, if this is a good idea. Free transfer moves can sometimes look more attractive than what they actually are, but as a false 9, he has been really good for us. Of course, the injury has meant that he's been largely unavailable, but another good option in the back pocket with the huge match experience from that Real Madrid mentality, which we need, just like with Sergio Ramos last season. All in all, I think it's a good and interesting option, and he should be back to be playing very soon. Some suggest even directly after this international break, but we will see to what extent he will be ready for that time. Bradley Barcola is also in the mix, and now on the whole, I've been very happy with him. I feel like he might have even overperformed my expectations. Of course, not the most playing time for him either, but when he's there, he's dangerous. Now, I noticed that I'm quite positive about pretty much every player here, and part of that is that I'm fairly cup is half full type of personality, but also because each player, for the most part, I see the good in them. Perhaps someone like Carlos Soler, I don't quite understand. I think he's a mismatch in our system, or perhaps with Ligue 1 in more general terms. And it's also true that if I had made the same episode exactly 1 year ago, I would have also had mainly good things to say, as the beginning of the season was really strong. It was all downhill from there, but perhaps the difference now is that the beginning of the season has not been very good. It's been far from flawless, and I'm still feeling quite positive. Perhaps that is a good thing. We have now gone through the entire team as far as the players who have been playing, with only one exception. Only one player remains, and that player is arguably, well, in my opinion, he is the best there is on this football planet. Kylian Mbappé. This last summer, I spent more minutes talking about Mbappe's future on PSG Review than what he did playing football in our preseason, which, to be honest with you, wasn't a difficult feat, as he was sidelined due to what seemed like a bit of a dead end in his contract situation. Mbappe's contract will run out next summer, and that means that in January he could already sign the pre-contract with another club and to be on his merry way. And for PSG, the issue was that with his salaries and bonuses that the club has given him, it would be a financial setback on top of losing a player like that. But the reality with him is that you can't bank on him anyway. No one can. Real Madrid has been taking it for granted that he joins them, but the reality is that Mbappé will do whatever he wants. He doesn't bow down for anybody, and that's been tough for many to digest, least of all Real Madrid fans, or even some of the players who keep on talking about this potential arrival. I mean, they are most probably just answering questions from reporters who are looking for clicks, but if our players said anything other than I don't talk about players of other clubs to these questions, to this extent, I'd be quite embarrassed of them. to be fair. It did happen a little bit with Messi when that rumor was going around, and it was mainly by Di Maria actually. But all in all, this has been something I haven't been able to understand. It just looks so tacky. Just don't talk about players from other team and their potential future, because you don't really get to decide it. And I understand it's a question that is being asked from you, but just, know better. You should be media trained enough to know that this is not your place to say anything. Mbappe's numbers for this season are great. He more than less created them as soon as he hit the pitch, but it hasn't been all fireworks since. And I think that the expectations to a player like him are such that it will always be difficult to match them exactly. Even at the match against Stade Rennes, when Mbappé missed a goal, it was kind of one of those situations that it's news when Kylian Mbappé doesn't score a goal. If he scores a goal, that's not a news. But if he misses the goal, that is news. And that's a kind of high expectation if you think about it, what it means in practice. And there's been talk about fatigue, physical or emotional or both, or even some other kinds of fatigue now. And at the moment right now, he's actually in mourning for loss of a loved one. And I send my condolences to him, of course. Does Mbappé give you the vibe of someone who will extend his contract in Paris? Well, no, he doesn't. But then he never does, really. I mean, last time he even tricked Fabrizio Romano. So what chance do the rest of us have here predicting his future? He may or he may not. Who knows? And it's probably too early to say anyway. I mean, in Paris, he has now the project we assumed that he was hoping for. He is the main guy with his friends around him. The new signings are there to support what we assume is his vision. But with him, you can't know, and the sooner we make peace with that, the better it is. My wish with him is that he either makes a long-term extension and commits to Paris, whatever that means, or that he makes a short extension and is sold early next summer. The emphasis on early. I don't want it to happen like late August, but none of this annual headache of will he, won't he is too much. He's getting so much money from us anyway as it is that I doubt that he will get that from anywhere in Europe, and I doubt that he will want to leave Europe either. So there's that, but he won't live on the financial edge even if he would take a huge pay cut. So it's entirely up to him, whatever he wants to do, whatever he decides to do. And what might also be entirely up to him is the near future of Xavi Simons by a logical extension, because if Mbappé goes, it seems like a no-brainer for Xavi to return to Paris, but I doubt that he will come to sit on the bench even a little bit. The worst-case scenario is for me that Mbappé stays long enough to compromise the future of Xavi Simons in and for Paris and then leaves, but he will do, like said, as he pleases. And he is in a position to do so, but the concession, and this is a crucial one that has been reportedly made, is that he's said to be okay with not getting all of his bonuses if he goes even for free. So that will provide some financial help for the club. Even if they're not getting the transfer fee, they will save a huge amount of money in these other costs. For me, I'd love to see him in our colors, even for his entire career, of course, but in equal measure, I understand that banking on him will always be a risk, and it will be that, by the way, if he goes to any other team as well, because he doesn't really prioritize any club over himself, which I get. Yeah, I know it's a team sport, but he has this one career and he needs to play his cards right, and he's not your average player, because I doubt that anyone thinks that his personal goal is nothing short of going down in history as the greatest who ever played football. That is all for now. The team is on its international break currently. We hope for no injuries there so we can get back to club football in full effect. And today I'm not spending too much time on women's team, not because I don't think it's important or interesting. I think that it's very important and very interesting, but because due to some circumstances I was actually unable to watch the match against Manchester United in the Champions League. But that ended 1-1. The second leg will be in Paris, and PSG must knock the Mancunians out of the park, figuratively speaking, and I trust that they will. A very unfortunate bit of news is, however, that the defensive midfielder Orion Jean-Francois suffered an injury and will be on the recovery for a long period again. These things happen more and more, especially in women's football. It's very concerning altogether. But more PSG review next time. In the meantime, go rate and review the show on your chosen podcast platform. You can also check the show up on TikTok now. I'm experimenting with it. My commitment to it is no stronger than Kylian Mbappe's commitment to PSG, but I think that if it works out and will help me to find some new listeners, then I'd do it. But I'm not exactly trying to be social media famous. That sounds pretty crueling. Actually, I'm a radio guy and I love podcasts. This is what I do. But if it helps, then I'll try something else also. And I also do spend perhaps too much time on Twitter. So come and say hello at PSG Review Pod. And on Instagram, you can find me at PSG Review. TikTok, by the way, is also simply at PSG Review. Thanks so much. Until the next time. Peace.